You can have your meatball cooked and ready to go in like 15 minutes. It's got a nice golden brown color to it. I would hope Chris Morocco would be fully impressed with this vegan meatball. Today's recipe was actually inspired by Chris Morocco's BA Best Meatball. And I wanted to just show how you can make that with a little bit of a meatless twist. The first thing I'm gonna do is quarter and peel this onion here. And I'm just using a sweet onion. I really like the flavor. A yellow onion works well for this recipe as well. Smash 2 cloves of garlic. I really just want large pieces so that I can remove the garlic from the sauce at the end of cooking. Now my favorite, we've got our scotch bonnet pepper, which is a pepper that is used a lot in Jamaican cooking. That's gonna give it a really nice spicy level to the sauce, but also it adds like a subtle sweetness and a really nice bold flavor. Anytime I can add a little bit of my cultural flair to a recipe, I tried to do that. You could also swap out with a habanero pepper. They're pretty much very similar. I'm gonna cut that in half. We're only gonna utilize half because it's a very spicy pepper.
Do you always try to match your peppers to your shirt?
You know, I don't always match my peppers to my shirt, but when I do, I use Scotch bonnet. There's a lot of like seeds in there. Those seeds are extremely spicy, so you're gonna wanna de-seed that. I don't deal well with overly spicy things. I like a medium spice. I'm a medium spice girl, that's about it. Once you have all of your ingredients prepped and ready, you could get started on the sauce, so let's do that. Today I'm using whole peeled organic San Marzano style tomatoes. I'm just gonna start breaking those tomatoes up with my hands. Oh, that was bad. The thing is, I knew that was gonna happen. I almost wore white. That would have been tragic. So if you don't want to get too messy, you could use a potato masher. That works really well for breaking down whole tomatoes. But at this time, I'm gonna go wash my hands because they are... I'm gonna turn this on to medium heat, and I will now add 5 tablespoons of plant butter. It's usually made out of like coconut oil, almond oil blend. I'm using this like Flora brand that's really good. Tastes very similar to real butter, so I actually really like it. You literally can just plop your tomatoes and everything else in here. Again, this is an easy sauce. It's meant to be. Everything goes in. We're gonna throw our basil in there as well. And a bay leaf. This sauce is gonna be very, very rich. Almost like creamy, which is unique for a tomato sauce. I'm just adding like 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I'm also just gonna do a couple cranks of black pepper for added flavor and give this a good stir once over. And I'll stir it occasionally until that butter melts. I'm just gonna kind of leave that and forget it for the next 35 minutes. So now we're gonna make some cashew-based Parmesan, which I know sounds crazy, but it's actually extremely simple to make and very delicious. I'm gonna grab my food processor. We brought it back to the 80s here. I'm going to include cashew Parmesan in the meatball recipe because that's what Chris does. He uses real Parmesan, but I'm gonna use this to kind of bring out the flavors a little bit more. Nutritional yeast has like a cheesy undertone to it, so a lot of vegans will use it to enhance the flavor of any kind of dairy-free cheese substitutes that they try to attempt, or it's even really good on popcorn and things like that. So it's just a really good pantry staple in my opinion. All right, so let's get started. I've got a cup of cashews, throwing that in the food processor. We've got 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, teaspoon onion powder, and a teaspoon of salt here. We're gonna pulse this for about 30 seconds, and it's gonna get a very fine powder. All right, perfect. You'll notice sometimes when you're trying to make cashew parm that like a buttery type of substance will start to form on the bottom. It didn't get to that point yet, but it's just like a fine crumble that could have gone to that point if I had pulsed for another minute or two. It's quite interesting. It's like you can make your own cashew butter at home with a food processor. For this recipe, we're going to use lentils as the mainframe for the meatball. It's a really awesome way to incorporate a meatless option into your diet. So the first thing we're gonna do here is using fresh bread, cut off the crusts And never throw out the crusts. You can always make your own torn croutons from scratch. You can cut them into cubes and then season them with salt, pepper, oregano, and some olive oil, and pop them in the oven at 400 degrees, and then you have croutons for a salad. We have 3 slices of bread here. Chris actually soaks his bread in water. I'm soaking my bread in unsweetened, full-fat oat milk. Anywhere I can add a little bit more fat content or a little more oomph to a vegan dish, I will always try to. Chris says he wrings it out after soaking it in water. Feels so weird, honestly. It doesn't feel right. It's shocking. It's almost like a little sponge. Now I'm just cutting that bread into cubes. I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. Preheating before you get started on the meatballs is the best way to, again, to optimize efficiency, because by the time the meatballs are done and ready to go, you can pop them into the oven. So I'm just prepping the garlic now. We're just using 2 cloves today. You want a fine mince for this recipe. You want the garlic to evenly disperse throughout the meatballs. The next thing we're gonna do is just roughly chop the parsley. You don't wanna bruise the herb, but we do want to make sure that the pieces are small enough to disperse within the meatball. What we're gonna do now is add our aquafaba, which, let me just tell you, aquafaba is like magic bean juice liquid. It is the byproduct of any legume being cooked for an extended period of time. So if you have a can of chickpeas in your pantry, it's a really great egg replacer. It works as a great emulsifier. You can make vegan mayo out of it, actually. It also really works well as a binder, so that's why we're using it for our binder as the egg in this recipe. So I'm adding a 1/3 cup of that cashew parmesan that we made earlier. We're gonna add 2 cups of cooked lentils. We are using green lentils. You can also use brown lentils. Give this all a gentle mix. Make sure that aquafaba kind of gets onto everything. I have a mortar and pestle here. We're using 3/4 of a teaspoon of fennel, and I'm just gonna go ahead and crush that. That'll just open the seeds right up. Oh my God, you can you smell that? Well, obviously you can't smell it, but. So to this, I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, an 1/8 teaspoon of nutmeg, also adding some marjoram. And marjoram's a really nice seasoning. It's in the same family as oregano, but it's slightly more floral. It adds like a nice savory note to the dish. I'm gonna add some oregano and some crushed red pepper flakes for added spice and flavor. Give that another mix once over. Just a small one. And then I'm gonna just slowly add some of these breadcrumbs. I have about 3/4 cup. Depending on how much liquid is in your lentils, you might need more or less. And I'm gonna use my hands to just combine the mixture. And it's feeling a little wet to me, so that's why we use it as like an additional binder. It kind of feels like I'm playing in kinetic sand. It's like one of those weird like experiences right now. I kind of like it. But you see, it's coming into like this one cohesive ball. In order to form the meatballs and not get so much residue on your hands in that process, I'm just gonna lightly oil my hands, a little bit of olive oil, and we're just gonna take a chunk and kind of just ball that. This should make like 8 or 9 large meatballs or 12 to 14 smaller ones. So these are honestly like the most structurally stable vegan meatballs that I've ever had. Again, that aquafaba and the breadcrumb add beautiful binding properties. Just gonna pop them in the freezer to let them set and firm up a little bit more. Our sauce is done. It's ready to go. I'm just gonna get some water boiling for our pasta today. And I'm just gonna like salt that water. You know what, I'm just gonna heavily salt it. I'm gonna get that burner on. A question I always get in videos is, pasta isn't vegan. And a lot of times, you will find pasta products that are enriched with eggs, but this company actually just makes their pasta out of durum wheat and water. So, vegan. Oof, our sauce is ready. I'm going to just keep it simmering on low though, until our meatballs are ready to go into the sauce. You know where it's right where you want it to be, because the onions and like the peppers will have kind of like an oily yellow sheen to them, and you'll see a little bit of oils kind of sitting on the top, and the onions will be slightly like wilted and cooked through. So I'm just gonna remove the onions from the sauce, and of course our scotch bonnet pepper. And I'm just finding those bay leaves and the basil. Now we're gonna move on from the sauce and get started on frying our meatballs. It is a complete meatball. It is fantastic, or I'll call them leet balls, lentil balls, I don't know. So I'm just gonna get some olive oil into a small fry pan, and I have it on medium heat, and we're just gonna allow that oil to heat up for a little bit. So now we can just add our meatballs, and I'm gonna fry in batches here. It just allows for more even cooking, so I'll do 4 at a time. When you're cooking meatballs in a sauce, that could take an hour or longer, where these veggie meatballs just come together a lot quicker than that. We just are gonna repeat this on all sides until our meatballs are fully browned. This is looking ready to me. It's got a nice crispy, crunchy outer layer on a couple sides. I really gave this a good squeeze accidentally with the tongs, like a good squeeze, and it's still staying together. Like, I gotta give myself some snaps for that. We're gonna just pop them in the oven for about 7 to 10 minutes. So our meatballs are ready from the oven. We don't want them to dry out too much, that's why the cooking time is short. And I'm just gonna place these bad boys in there, turn up the heat to medium-low. Our pasta water is boiling, so I'm gonna get our pasta in there. I want it to be al dente, so I'm only gonna cook it for about 7 minutes. All right, so this, hello. Do you guys believe in the pasta being ready when it sticks to a wall method, or no? I don't think it's ready. It's going right behind you.
Go for it.
Oh wait, holy crap, it's ready. And it looks like a fish. That's pretty great. So, I've just ruled out that pasta trick then. It's a lie. And still, folks, holding their full structural integrity. That's what I'm talking about. Pasta should be perfectly ready now. Move the pasta over, give this a good mix, and you can see there's some chunks in the sauce. I really like that. Just gonna start plating this. We're just gonna put that right at the center. Just give it a nice little twirl. I just want some of that chunky tomato in there. It's my favorite. And then we're just gonna grab like 3 meatballs. I'm just gonna sprinkle some cashew parmesan. You can see it kind of brings that realness to life. We've got really nice finishing salt that's like slightly sweet. And then we're just gonna go in with some torn basil. I really like plating and making things look really beautiful. Thinking about the color balance in food and everything like that. I guess that's why my friends call me Bob Ross of cooking. They say I go a little overboard, but I like to have fun. And there you have it. See how the structure holds up. Oh yeah, look at that. Just gonna put it at the edge so you can see the inside of that meatball. It's still completely structurally sound, which is awesome. You get an aftertaste of lentils. It's not even the most forward flavor. It's really the spices that are making the dish. And they balance out perfectly with the pasta. Yeah, I don't know. This is pretty freaking good for a lentil meatball, I would say, for a meatball. Chris, if you're watching, I would like you to reverse engineer this meatball. I want to see if you could do it. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Chrissy texted me a photo on Friday. It was my birthday, and she wished me a happy birthday, which was just wonderful. But do I think I could reverse engineer Chrissy's vegan meatballs? I think I could, well, I don't know, actually. I actually have no idea.